You won't believe what she found written on the underside of her bedroom windowsill when the police told her to check. She had lived in that apartment for 3 years. She knew every inch of it. She thought she knew every person who had ever been inside it. She was wrong on both counts. The writing on the underside of the windowsill had been there for at least 8 months, according to the detective who examined it. 8 months of someone coming back to that window. 8 months of marks being added to a tally that she had never seen because you do not look at the underside of your own windowsill. You never think you need to. Tonight we have 3 true stalker horror stories from people who discovered too late that someone had been watching them for a very long time. A woman who found out the man who had been sending her flowers had a key to her apartment. A couple who discovered that the figure they had been seeing at the edge of their property for weeks had been inside their house while they slept. And a woman home alone on a rainy Tuesday night who heard something that made her understand in the space of a single heartbeat that she was not as alone as she thought she was. These stories are dark, they are bloody, they are the specific nightmare fuel of someone who has looked up from their ordinary life and found a pair of eyes looking back at them from somewhere they should never have been. Lock every door tonight, check every window, and whatever you do, do not assume that because you cannot see anyone watching, that nobody is. Story 1. The tally. I want to tell you about the 8 months I lived with someone I did not know existed. Not in my house, not in my building, just present in the way that a shadow is present. Not something you can touch or confront or report to anyone. Just a darkness at the edge of your peripheral vision that you keep almost seeing and keep dismissing because the alternative is too unsettling to sit with for very long. I dismissed it for 8 months. I am a teacher. I live alone in a second-floor apartment in a residential neighborhood. The kind of neighborhood where everyone knows each other well enough to wave and not well enough to notice if something is wrong. I moved there 4 years ago and I loved it immediately. The coffee shop on the corner, the park 2 blocks down, the specific comfortable anonymity of a place where you are known but not known well. I felt safe there. I felt safe there for 3 years before I found out what had been happening in the year before that feeling ended. It started with the flowers, not alarming flowers, not the flowers of someone making a dramatic gesture, simple flowers. A small bunch left on my doorstep on a Monday morning. No card, no note, just flowers in the specific understated way of something that wants to be noticed but not identified. I assumed they were from a colleague who had mentioned finding my address to drop something off and who I thought might have left them as a friendly gesture. I texted her. She said she had not left flowers. I assumed it was a mistake. Wrong door, wrong apartment. The ordinary confusion of a delivery misrouted. The following Monday there were more flowers. This continued for 6 weeks. Every Monday morning, a small bunch of flowers on my doorstep. No card, no note, no indication of who was leaving them or why. I asked my neighbors. I checked with the building manager. I looked at the entry camera footage from the front door of my building for 3 consecutive Monday mornings and found nothing. Whoever was leaving the flowers was doing so before the timestamp I was checking, or was accessing the building through a route that avoided the camera. I told a friend. She said it was probably an admirer and that it was romantic. I told her it did not feel romantic. She said I was being paranoid. I was not being paranoid. On the 7th Monday there were no flowers. On the Tuesday morning I came home from work to find my apartment exactly as I had left it in every visible respect. Same jacket on the hook, same coffee cup on the counter, same books on the table. Everything exactly where I had left it, except the photograph on my bookshelf had been moved, not significantly, just slightly, turned perhaps 15 degrees from the position I always kept it in, facing the room rather than angled slightly toward the window the way I always had it, a change so small that I genuinely could not be certain I had not moved it myself without remembering. I told myself I had moved it without remembering. 3 weeks later, I came home to find my bedroom window open. I did not open my bedroom window. I had not opened it in weeks because the weather had turned cold and I had no reason to. It was open approximately 4 inches, just enough to admit a hand, just enough to allow someone standing on the fire escape outside to reach in and push it further and climb through. I called the police. They came. They checked the apartment. They found nothing disturbed and no one present and no evidence of forced entry because the window had not been forced. It had been opened from the outside with something that had manipulated the latch through the gap at the bottom of the frame, a technique that works on older window frames of exactly the type my apartment had. One of the officers asked me to check the windowsill carefully, both sides of it. He did not tell me why he was asking. He just asked me to check. I checked on the underside of the bedroom windowsill, the surface you never see because it faces downward and there is no reason to look at it unless someone tells you to. There were marks, tally marks, made with something sharp into the painted wood of the sill, groups of 5, the way you count things when you want to keep track of a number over time. I counted them in the specific cold clarity of someone whose brain has understood something before their emotions have caught up. 43. The officer who had asked me to check looked at the marks for a long time. Then he said, "Each mark is a visit." He said it quietly and without drama, the way people say things they wish they did not have to say. He said, "Someone has been coming to this window for a significant period of time." I asked him what 43 visits over approximately 8 months meant in terms of frequency. He said roughly once every 5 days, on average, though some will have been more frequent than others. The investigation identified a man who had been seen in my neighborhood on multiple occasions by 2 different neighbors who had not previously connected their separate sightings. He had been watching me from the park 2 blocks down, my running route, my coffee shop, my comings and goings, for the better part of a year before he had begun coming to the window. He was arrested. He was charged. He was convicted of stalking and criminal trespass and sentenced to a period of imprisonment that felt both significant and insufficient simultaneously. At the sentencing hearing, I learned that he had been inside my apartment on at least 3 separate occasions. The photograph on the bookshelf. 2 other instances that the forensic evidence established but that I had not noticed because he had been careful not to leave anything obviously disturbed. He had been inside my home while I slept. 3 times that could be proven. 43 times that he had stood at my window in the dark and watched me through the glass and made a mark on the sill before he left. I do not live in that apartment anymore. I do not live in that neighborhood. I do not run the same routes or go to the same coffee shop or maintain any of the patterns that made me readable to someone patient enough to learn them. I check the underside of every windowsill in every place I live now, every single one, every time I move, before I unpack a single box. What do you think he was waiting for? And what do you think he would have done on visit 44 if the window had not been reported? Patience is the most terrifying quality a predator can have. The next story proves that the most dangerous stalker is not the one who makes himself known. It is the one who waits until he is certain you are completely alone. Story 2. The edge of the property. My husband and I bought the house in March, a farmhouse on 2 acres at the end of a private road in a rural area 40 minutes from the city where we both worked. It was everything we had been looking for. Space, quiet, the specific piece of a place where the nearest neighbor is far enough away that you can hear the wind in the trees without hearing anything else. We were very happy there for approximately 6 weeks before the figure appeared at the edge of the property. My husband saw it first. A Tuesday evening in early May, dusk settling over the fields at the back of the property, and he was standing at the kitchen window with a coffee watching the light go when he saw something at the tree line at the far edge of our land. A figure, standing very still at the boundary between our field and the woods beyond it, too far away to see clearly in the failing light. Just a shape, human in outline, standing at the tree line and not moving. He watched it for several minutes. It did not move. It did not do anything except stand at the edge of the tree line in the dusk and exist in a way that he found unsettling enough to mention to me when I came into the kitchen. By the time I looked, it was gone. Over the following 3 weeks, the figure appeared 7 more times. always at dusk or after dark, always at the far edge of the property near the tree line, always standing completely still for a period of time before disappearing. My husband saw it 4 times. I saw it twice. Once we saw it together, standing at the back door looking out across the dark field at the shape at the tree line that stood there for 11 minutes before the darkness swallowed it completely. We called the local police twice. Both times an officer came and walked the property and found nothing at the tree line. No footprints, no disturbed undergrowth, no evidence of anyone having stood there. The first officer suggested it might be a neighbor cutting through our land to access the woods for legitimate purposes and not wanting to knock and introduce themselves. The second officer, who had come on a different night and who was quieter and more thorough in his search of the tree line, said nothing specific but left his direct number and told us to call it rather than the general line if we saw the figure again. We installed cameras, 4 of them, covering all sides of the property, motion activated, feeding to an app on both our phones that would alert us if anything triggered them after dark. On the 3rd night after the cameras went up, the motion alert fired at 2:17 in the morning. Not from the camera covering the back field and the tree line where the figure always appeared, from the camera covering the front of the house. I want to describe the footage carefully because it is the most disturbing thing I have ever watched, and I want to be precise about what it showed. The front camera covered the driveway, the front door, and the area immediately around the house, including the side path that ran along the left side of the building to the back garden. The footage showed a figure coming from the direction of the back garden, from the direction of the tree line where the figure always stood, walking along the side path toward the front of the house at 2:17 in the morning, walking slowly, without haste, without any of the body language of someone who believes they are being observed or recorded. The specific unhurried movement of someone who has done this before and has no reason to believe this time will be different from the previous times. The figure approached the front door. It tried the handle, slowly, carefully, the specific gentle pressure of someone testing rather than forcing, checking whether the door would open without resistance rather than trying to break through it. The handle moved downward approximately halfway and then stopped because the door was deadbolted from the inside and would not open regardless of whether the handle turned. The figure held the handle in the depressed position for a long moment, then released it, then stood at the front door of our house at 2:17 in the morning for 4 minutes without moving, and then walked back along the side path toward the back garden and the tree line and the dark beyond it and was gone. I called the officer's direct number at 2:19 in the morning while my husband watched the live camera feed and I watched him watch it, and neither of us spoke. The officer came within 20 minutes. He reviewed the footage. He called for additional units. They searched the property and the tree line and the woods beyond with flashlights and found a path through the undergrowth that had been used repeatedly over a period of time. The Kinok, specific compressed and worn quality of a route that has been walked many times in the same direction by the same feet. The path led from the tree line to the edge of our back field, and it ended there, at the point where the figure always stood. It did not lead to anywhere else. It led to that spot and stopped. A path built specifically to reach the place where someone had been standing and watching our house from the dark for 3 weeks. They never identified who it was. The camera footage was not sufficient resolution in the darkness to produce a usable image of the figure's face. The path through the woods connected to a public right-of-way that could have been accessed from multiple points. No forensic evidence was recoverable from the worn ground of the path. We sold the house in August. 5 months after we bought it, we took a significant financial loss on the sale, and we did not care. My husband still checks the camera app on his phone before he goes to sleep every night, even though we now live in a city apartment on the 14th floor with a doorman and a coded entry system and no tree line within 2 miles. He checks it every night. I understand why. What do you think the figure was waiting for on those nights at the tree line? And how many times do you think it had tried the front door before the cameras went up? Some people watch from a distance until they are ready to get closer. Some people are already inside before you know they exist. The final story is the one that will make you check every room in your house tonight before you go to sleep, because it happened on a night exactly like this one. Rainy, quiet, home alone, and completely ordinary right up until it wasn't. Story 3. Home Alone. I am going to tell you about a Tuesday night in November, a completely ordinary Tuesday night. I had worked late, come home in the rain, made dinner, watched something on television that I cannot now remember, and gone to bed at around 10:30 with the specific bone tiredness of someone who has been moving too fast for too long and has finally stopped. I fell asleep quickly, deeply. The kind of sleep that feels earned. I woke at 2:40 in the morning, not gradually, not the slow surfacing of normal waking, the specific instant full consciousness of a body that has heard something and pulled itself out of deep sleep to deal with it before the conscious mind is caught up enough to know what it heard. I lay in the dark of my bedroom and I listened. The rain was loud on the roof and on the windows. A heavy sustained November rain that had been falling when I went to sleep and that had intensified during the night to the specific drumming weight of a serious storm. My bedroom was dark except for the faint ambient glow of the streetlight outside filtered through the curtains. Everything was exactly as it should be, and then I heard it again, a footstep, not from outside, not from the street or the neighbor's house or anywhere that the rain and the night and the ordinary sounds of a residential street could account for. From inside my house, from the direction of the hallway outside my bedroom door. The specific weighted sound of a floorboard compressed by a foot. A sound I knew intimately because I knew which floorboard made that sound and exactly how much weight was required to produce it. And I had never once in 2 years of living in that house heard it made by anything other than my own foot. I did not move. I lay in my bed in the dark with the rain on the roof and the streetlight through the curtains and the knowledge that something was in the hallway outside my bedroom door, and I did not move a single muscle because moving felt like it would confirm something that I was not ready to have confirmed. Another footstep, closer. I want to tell you what happened in the next 30 seconds as precisely as I can because I have replayed it so many times that I know it in the specific granular detail of something that has been examined from every angle and from every emotional distance available to me. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, slowly, without sitting up. My hand found it in the dark and I closed my fingers around it and I pressed the button on the side to wake the screen, and in the faint light of the screen in the dark of my bedroom I looked at the gap under my bedroom door. There was a shadow in the gap, the specific interrupted darkness of something standing on the other side of a door blocking the light from the hallway nightlight that I always left on. A shadow that had the shape of 2 feet, standing directly outside my bedroom door. I called 911. I do not remember making the decision to call. I remember the dispatcher's voice and I remember whispering because I was certain that if I spoke at normal volume, whatever was standing outside my bedroom door would hear me, and I was not ready for whatever came after that. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line. She told me units were on the way. She talked to me in the specific calm, measured voice of someone trained to be the most stable thing in an unstable situation, and I held on to that voice the way you hold on to something solid when the ground is moving. The shadow under the door did not move for 4 minutes. Then it moved, not toward the door, away from it, back down the hallway in the direction it had come from. I heard the footsteps receding and then a sound from the direction of the kitchen that I identified after a moment as the back door. The specific sound of it being opened and closed quickly, not slammed, just closed, in the careful way of someone who does not want to make more noise than necessary on their way out. The police arrived 6 minutes later. They found the back door unlocked. The lock had been manipulated in a way consistent with a bump key, a technique that leaves no visible damage to the lock itself. They searched the house and the garden and the surrounding streets. They found no one. What they found in my kitchen was worse than finding someone. On the kitchen counter beside the back door there was a glass of water, a clean glass from my own cabinet, filled with water from my own tap, placed on the counter beside the door as if someone had stopped for a drink on their way out or on their way in. The glass had condensation on the outside, suggesting it had been filled some time before the police arrived. Before I woke up, before the footstep in the hallway, someone had been in my kitchen long enough to get a glass, fill it with water and drink from it, or set it down before walking down my hallway at 2:40 in the morning and standing outside my bedroom door in the dark and the rain, The detective who handled the case told me 3 things that I have never forgotten. The first thing, the bump key technique used on my back door was not something a casual opportunist would know. It required specific knowledge and specific equipment and suggested someone who had prepared for this specific entry point specifically. The second thing, my back door lock showed evidence of previous manipulation, not from that night, from before. The detective could not say how many previous occasions, but the wear pattern on the lock mechanism was consistent with repeated use of the same technique over a period of time. The third thing, a neighbor 2 streets away had reported a man sitting in a parked car outside my house on multiple occasions over the previous 2 months, and had not reported it because parked cars are not reportable, and she had not known whose house he was watching. He was never identified. He has never been found. The case is technically still open and, practically speaking, has not been actively investigated for 2 years because there is nothing to actively investigate. No forensic evidence, no usable description from my neighbor, no fingerprints on the glass because he had used one of my own dish towels to handle it and had left the dish towel folded neatly on the counter beside the glass, folded neatly beside a glass of water, in my kitchen, at 2:40 in the morning, while I slept in the room down the hall. I think about the dish towel more than I think about anything else from that night, more than the footstep or the shadow under the door or the sound of the back door closing. The dish towel folded neatly on the counter is the detail that lives most vividly in my memory because it is the detail that speaks most clearly about the kind of person who was in my house that night. Not frantic, not panicked, not rushed, careful, methodical, considerate in the specific horrible way of someone who has done this before and knows exactly how to leave a space looking as close to undisturbed as possible, except for the glass and the dish towel and the decision to walk down my hallway and stand outside my bedroom door at 2:40 in the morning in the rain, which was not careless. I do not think it was careless. I think it was intentional. I think he wanted me to wake up. I think he wanted me to know he had been there. Not enough to be caught. Just enough to know. What do you think he was trying to tell her by standing outside that door? And do you think the glass of water and the folded dish towel were the first things he had left behind? Thank you for listening. 3 stories from the dark and the rain and the specific terror of discovering that someone has been watching your ordinary life with an attention and a patience that you never knew existed until the moment you could no longer look away from it. The tally marks on the underside of the windowsill, 43 visits over 8 months by someone who had been inside her home 3 times while she slept. The path through the woods that led to the exact spot where the figure stood every night watching the house, built specifically to reach that point and nowhere else, and the glass of water on the kitchen counter, and the dish towel folded neatly beside it, and the shadow of 2 feet under a bedroom door at 2:40 in the morning, while the rain came down on the roof and the dispatcher's voice was the most stable thing in the world. These people are still out there. The man who made 43 marks on the windowsill is in prison, but the ones who tried the farmhouse door and stood in the hallway and folded the dish towel are not. They are somewhere right now, in someone's neighborhood, learning someone's schedule, standing at someone's tree line in the dark, trying someone's door handle in the small hours of a rainy November night. Lock every door tonight. Check every window. Look at the underside of your windowsills. And if something wakes you at 2 in the morning on a rainy Tuesday night, stay on the line and do not open your bedroom door. Like and subscribe for new horror stories every single week. Leave a comment telling me which story kept you awake. And if something has happened to you, something you noticed too late, something that made you realize you had not been as alone as you thought, leave it below. We read every single one. Good night. Lock your doors and listen to the rain